And can I begin by thanking Europe House for setting up this event tonight. It's a great opportunity to get to speak to a wider audience, and I shall try to speak as slowly as I can for the simultaneous interpreter. If I start to go too quickly, please let me know. It's been an absolute pleasure for me, a delayed pleasure I have to say, in coming to Georgia for the first time. It will certainly, I promise, not be my last time. The hospitality of the people and the beauty of the landscape and the intellectual rigor of those that I have met during my trip has made it a very memorable one. In particular, can I thank the President, who I count as a personal friend as well as a valued international colleague, for the time he has made available. Not many people get a 1 a.m. tour of the city by the President himself. He is a committed and courageous leader. His energy, whether it is building the economic construct, smiting the scourge of corruption, or building the defence capability of his country, is astonishing, and I wish I knew the secret for the energy that he displays. Now, 25 years ago, a much more important visit than mine took place when Margaret Thatcher, as British Prime Minister, visited here as the Soviet Union was teetering on the brink of collapse. She described vividly her impressions of a nation with a very distinct identity and heritage, and she longed for the right political and economic conditions within which an ancient and distinctive nation could flourish. And I'm very pleased that Lady Thatcher has lived to see that come to pass, and she asked me to pass on her best wishes to all of you tonight. More recently, another British Conservative leader, David Cameron, showed both courage and an instinctive decisiveness in travelling to Tbilisi at the time of your greatest crisis. And there could not have been a clearer commitment to your freedom and security from one of your most supportive allies. It was an act, I think, of great leadership at a time of greatest need. So what have we learned in the 25 years since Margaret Thatcher's historic visit? As we look back on the years of the Cold War, policymakers, though probably not the citizens involved, might be forgiven for viewing the bipolarity which it created in defence and security policy with a touch of nostalgia for the relative simplicity of that time. Global security, at least from the perspective of nation-states being free from external invasion, relied upon a balance between the two superpowers. NATO and the Warsaw Pact were the primary players, and if conflicts did emerge, they tended to be between proxies, different actors in different parts of the globe. And security was deemed to be achieved if the integrity of the nation-state itself was intact, free from interference from other nation-states. Sometime after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I remember asking Lady Thatcher, who I worked for a brief period, why it was that so many clever people had given so much thought to how to end the Cold War, but apparently so little had been given about what to do afterwards. And her answer was characteristically forthright, and she said, "But my dear, we didn't expect it to happen so quickly." And of course, it did happen quickly. It happened at a breakneck speed. But the end of the Cold War was not an accident. As I often say, the Cold War didn't just end. The Cold War was won. And it came about because the leadership of the free world was committed politically, militarily, economically, and morally to the defeat of a totalitarian ideology and the triumph of liberty and freedom. It was not an exercise in expediency, but the application of conviction. Fundamentally, Western leaders, particularly Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, instinctively recognised that defence and security was not simply a matter of military hardware. They recognised that in the Cold War it was necessary to delegitimise the views of the communist world, not least by having a clear and credible alternative of their own, based on liberty, law, and the application of constitutional government. And that fundamental dynamic has not changed today. Freedom, let us remember, is not the natural state of affairs. It has to be plucked from the forces of disorder, anarchy, and oppression. It must be fought for in every place and in every generation, and then nurtured and protected. Its enemies are many: the pursuit of personal power, external aggression, and internal complacency. The flag of liberty is woven from the sacrifices of men and women, known and unknown, in the face of threat, of terror, and of tyranny. This country continues to face direct and immediate threats to that liberty. Yesterday, I visited the line of occupation. From free Georgia, I could see a foreign flag flying over the territory that the international community recognises as part of Georgia's own territorial integrity. What other term is there for that other than occupation? The free world must redouble its efforts to see the agreements already made put into effect and raise its voice in defence of the people of this nation. But the threats to freedom here in Georgia do not only come from outside. Vibrant democracies need to nurture the institutions that provide long-term stability. The media must be free to say what is inconvenient to political leaders. The idea that you can buy up the media to such an extent that it becomes little more than a self-publicity house is, I think, both morally wrong and increasingly impractical in the internet world. Likewise, meaningful opposition needs to be moderate and constructive, not just a collecting point for the spitefully negative, the cynically destructive, or the frankly anarchistic. Free speech and the rule of law cannot have favourites. They must apply equally to the governing and the governed alike. The price of freedom can be high indeed, paid for in lost dreams, lost futures, and even lost lives. You in Georgia understand that all too clearly. But that price, when it is paid, can unlock undreamed of possibilities for future generations. As we enter this new year, we should remember that the best way to honour sacrifice is with peace. We honour those who paid the price of freedom with our efforts to savour it, to nurture it, and to protect it. And I hope that today we can recommit ourselves to that historic mission.